You'll love that.
Download our app today and enjoy tackle-busting benefits with great odds, more markets and same-game multi every NRL match at Palmerbet. Gamble responsibly. For Gamblers' Help, call 1-800-858-858.
Welcome everyone to episode 429 of Fergo and Freak. I'm your host, the Glorious League Freak, and today I'm joined with a very special guest. She follows the World Champions and the NRL Champions. It's Nadine. Hello, Nadine.
Hello, Freaky. How are you?
I'm pretty good. How are you?
I am good. I am finally thawed out after the trip to Canberra yesterday to watch the Raiders, begrudgingly. But this is what we do when we're in relationships, right?
Yeah.
But yes, no, doing very well. Thank you.
That's good. And look, Canberra, a lot of people have some terrible things to say about Canberra. I actually think that it's way worse.
Yes, correct. It was so bad. Somebody shot the airport up yesterday. So, I mean, what more do you need to say?
I heard that they told him that he was 5 minutes delayed for his flight, and that was just 5 minutes too much for him.
Yeah, he just went off the handle.
Now, I lost a bet on the weekend between me and Mofo Storm fan, so I have some things I need to say to start the podcast. The first thing I need to say is the Melbourne Storm are a superior team to the Penrith Panthers, and the next thing I need to say is I strongly believe Cameron Smith is the GOAT and a lock for the next immortal. Fuck you, Mofo Storm fan. Get stuffed, you bastard. I've got like fucking 3 more other things to say during the week because I lost that bet.
Ouch.
Yeah, it's not good. Not good.
No.
Anyway.
Not good at all.
So
let's move on. Let's move on.
Yes. On this podcast, right, I thought what we would do is we would go through and we would rank every single contender for the title out of 10 compared to how worried we are about facing them as Penrith Panthers fans.
Okay.
Are you ready for this?
I am.
Because this is a question I haven't even put much thought into it, hey?
No.
So we're gonna go through the ladder and everybody that's still in finals contention. So that's from West Tigers position 9th place, which will be the Canberra Raiders, and then we'll go up the ladder eventually to 2nd place because obviously the world champion and NRL champion Panthers are in number 1. All right, let's start off with the Canberra Raiders. Now you have first-hand accounts of the Raiders. You've seen them live. You've seen them live on their home ground. Obviously, the Panthers a couple of weeks ago beat them so thoroughly that they had to give their week off to the coach. What do you rate the Canberra Raiders as a premiership threat to the Penrith Panthers out of 10?
0.
So do I.
Absolutely 0. And the fact that they're even flirting with the top 8 with a negative differential irritates me.
Oh, really?
And I actually think that if you have a negative differential, just you're not eligible. Seriously, it really irritates me that teams sneak into the top 8. And I understand it's on wins. I totally get it. But the negative differential irks me. Anyway, that's just me. But, yeah, 0. Yesterday they offered not a great deal at all. And, yeah, not concerned about them whatsoever.
Yeah, I agree.
They're mentally weak. They can't deal.
They really are. They're mentally weak. They fold really quickly. Put any pressure on them, they will lose. I don't expect that they will make the finals unless the Eels continue their free fall. But, I've got them as 0 out of 10 as a premiership threat to the Panthers as well, especially when you consider that we own the Viking Club and we own the Canberra Raiders soul.
Correct.
Okay, now moving on to the Sydney Roosters. What do you rate them out of 10 as a threat?
Oh, probably a 6 or a 7, maybe a 7. They're really coming home strong, and they've got a decent run into the finals. And, like Teddy, Manu, Sawali are hitting their straps at the right time in terms of the, back line, and their forwards are just really showing a bit of mongrel at the moment. So, and that worries me. It worries me, but at the same time, the likes of Hargreaves and Radley, they walk that fine line. So the mongrel that they've been showing the last couple of weeks, which has worked in their favour, could also go against them if it goes wrong. Yeah. So I put a bit of a caveat there, but they're looking strong, very much so. And they've got the Tigers this week, so that'll just give them another confidence boost.
Yeah, they should rack up a huge score against the Tigers. I rate them a 2 out of 10. I do not.
Really?
Yeah. I think that their forwards, if they come up against the Panthers will just shut their forward pack down. And I think that it just leaves too much for Tedesco to do, and Manu basically. And Manu, he's fantastic. He's a great player, but he's kind of wasted out there in the centres for the Roosters. And I just think that they're pretty easy to shut down for that fact.
Wow, interesting.
Keary, I think Keary will get the tap on the shoulder soon from them. One of those, you're our favourite son, now get the fuck out of here things that the Roosters love doing. And yeah, I just don't rate them. I think that they will be an easy beat in the finals if we face them.
Interesting.
Now, we're on to 7th place, the Parramatta Eels. Big game team, the Parramatta Eels. They played a lot of big games in the 80s. What do you rate the Parramatta Eels as a threat to the Panthers in our title defence out of 10?
5.
Okay. Now, why 5?
So that's purely based on they've had our measure twice this season, sadly. And yes, the last time they were playing against 12 men. So I can't discount that, but they're on the slide. So similar to the Raiders, they're not a mentally strong team. So the minute that they get owned, the minute that, and I know you've said this before, Campbell Gillard gets owned by somebody, that's it. They all just fold, and it's left to Moses to try and carry the team. And without Moses for at least the next one game, maybe two, they're on a slide that could impact them. They've got the Bulldogs this week, and I actually think the Bulldogs are a chance this week, to be fair. So, so I'm only really giving them a 5 because they've had our measure this season.
I'm giving them a 0.
A 0. I feel like that's out of spite.
Well, you know what? I will respect the Parramatta Eels when they fucking win something, and they haven't won anything. None of their players have ever been part of a successful NRL team. They've never won anything. They don't know what it takes to win. We beat them last time we faced them in the finals. We beat them. They get a 0. Their regular season wins. Wow, let's fucking give them a trophy all of a sudden for regular season wins. Who gives a fuck? They've got a half that disappears when it counts, right? They've got a forward pack that disappears in the finals. They haven't got a fullback. If they got a fullback, they might be a chance of beating us. But until they do something in the finals, ever in the last fucking 3 decades, 0. It's the Parramatta Eels, and they have that reputation for being the Eels for a fucking reason. Now,
wow.
Onto the Brisbane Broncos. What do you rate the Brisbane Broncos out of 10 as a premiership threat to the Penrith Panthers?
5 again.
Okay. Now,
and that's I think they're just ho-hum. They're kind of thereabouts. And it would be dependent on Reynolds.
Mm-hmm.
And that's purely it. I think it also depends on where they end up falling in that bottom half of the 8 and who they would need to play in week 1.
Yeah.
So, yeah, because as it stands at the moment, the Broncos would play the Eels.
Mm-hmm.
And the Broncos would win that.
Yeah.
And, after that, they're then playing a top 4 team, and I couldn't see them beating any of the top 4 teams. So it's a 5.
It's a shocker. I rate them a 7.
Really?
Yeah, and I'll tell you why. Because I think that if they can have all of their forwards back on deck by the finals, and it would be the second week of the finals if they played the Panthers, unless they went really far into the finals. And there's something about the Broncos. When we play them, the Broncos have one of their best games of the season. And in the past, like even last year, before they got Reynolds, their best game was against the Panthers. And I think with Reynolds there guiding them around the park, they'll be a little bit better again. I think the Panthers will beat them, but I think that the Broncos would make a real game of it. And they don't worry me too much, but I just feel as though that's one of those games that, man, we would have to be on to make sure we beat them.
Yep, that's fair.
Okay, now on to the South Sydney Rabbitohs, who are on fire at the moment, and Latrell Mitchell is just playing out of his skin. They're in 5th place on the ladder right now. I expect them to finish higher than that. Actually, yeah, they can finish higher than that. So,
yeah, they can.
What do you rate them out of 10?
It's 7 or an 8.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, just what you've just said. Latrell's looking probably similar to what I said about the Roosters. They've got those players that are, on that fine line where when they are on, they are amazing. But if they just go that one step too far, they become liabilities. Latrell fits that category. Cody Walker fits that category. And some of their forwards also fit that category. But Kalamatangi has been playing out of his skin the last few weeks. And he's really been setting up quite a lot in terms of backline movements for Latrell to take advantage of. So, yeah, I think in terms of that bottom 4 at the moment, I think this is the first season in ever that there are some genuine contenders that will end up in the bottom 4.
Yeah, I agree. I rate them a 9.
Wow.
But it's contingent on basically everything going smoothly right through. So we haven't seen Latrell Mitchell really have an extended finals run for now. So he needs to do that. They need all their forwards on deck. They just basically need to keep this team going forward as it is. And, whether that, the chances of that happening, who knows? But I just think that the thing that worries me is I feel as though you can play South and play them really well, and none of it can matter if Latrell Mitchell just has one of those games where you can't stop him, and he's one of the few players in the whole world that that you can say that about, and that's what gets me about South Sydney. Like, you might go in and be able to shut everyone else down, and Latrell Mitchell just says, "Nah, I'm not having it," and wins the game. So that's why I rate them a 9, because you just can't stop him when he's on. Now, the next team, the Melbourne Storm, what do you rate them out of 10?
6. I'm not worried about them.
Are you really not worried about them at all?
No, not as much as some of the others. I don't know. I feel like, okay, yeah, we lost against them on Thursday night, but they're not as the aura around them has gone. So, once upon a time it was, oh no, the Storm, oh my God, how are we going to beat them? We can't go through them. You can't go around them. You can't go over the top of them. But what we've seen this season, and even, the last couple of seasons, but more so this season, is, they're not as enigmatic as they once were. Teams have figured out how to beat them, where their weaknesses are. And having said that, Munster at fullback is a genius stroke. So if he plays the rest of the season at fullback, even when Hughes returns, that does worry me a little bit, because he's been amazing the last few weeks at fullback. But, yeah, I'm not as concerned about them as some others.
I probably rate them a 9 out of 10 as well. I think that the thing that worries me about the Storm is I think defensively they can pull it together in big games still. And, we know that the Panthers' attack sometimes can be really, really clunky. Like, they win their games defensively, they wear you down, and then by the last 20 minutes you're so stuffed. because of it, that's when they look like a really good attacking team because everyone else is stuffed on the opposition side. I can see where the Storm hang in there defensively and make it really difficult for the Panthers to have that last 20 minutes where they overwhelm you in attack. That's the thing that gets me about them. That and Munster, he's probably the only other one with Latrell that you look at with these teams and say, well, if he's on, what do you do? You know, obviously it's better when we have all of our players on deck and we're a different beast defensively as a team when everyone's back. But that's the thing that gets me. And obviously Craig Bellamy as a coach, you could see where he comes up with something and it's like, he's found the chink in the armour, you know. That's the other thing that worries me a little bit as well. Now, in third place on the ladder, we have the Cronulla Sharks. What do you rate them out of 10?
6.
Okay, why 6?
I don't know. They're mixed.
Yeah.
I feel like they've lucked their way into third, which sounds very disrespectful. They've obviously had good wins. Clearly, they're sitting, and they're only third on for and against because they've got the same points as the Cowboys. But I don't know. They just don't feel like a premiership winning squad this season, so I'm not worried about them.
Yeah, I rate them maybe 4 out of 10 at best. That's been really generous. They don't worry me at all.
Yeah.
Nico Hines is so good. It's amazing how he's gone to another level this year and he's really tough. He's playing tough footy as well, which you wouldn't think when you look at him, you know. But yeah, their forward pack, they're not a match for the Panthers. And I just think that outside of Hines, a lot of their other players run a bit hot and cold. And I think that against lesser teams, the players that are running hot get them through because their forward pack is all right. But I think against the Panthers defence, that's not going to be enough. And so I just don't think that they've got what it takes. So, yeah, I rate them on a really, really good day 4 out of 10.
Yeah.
Now, the last one, the Cowboys, North Queensland Cowboys. What do you rate them out of 10?
Probably a 7.
Yep.
7, yeah. I've kind of got the Cowboys, the Rabbitohs, and the Roosters kind of all in that same tier, that next tier. I like the kind of footy they're playing. They're tough. They're pretty good defensively. And they've got some amazing, with Val Holmes, Nanai, Felt. Their backline is, when they're on, particularly Nanai, that he's a freak. So, yeah, but I do find that once their forward pack starts getting dominated, they do struggle, similar to, to Parramatta. So, but it's rare that their forward pack gets significantly dominated.
Yeah.
So it's always a close contest. It's always a real physical contest. And so that would, in terms of where, so they'll play, if you look at the ladder at the moment, likely play the Sharks unless there's some significant movements. They could play the Storm. Who knows? Unless there's some significant movements in that week 1 final, that'll be in Townsville. They will be up for it. That'll be mental. That will actually be mental.
Yeah, well, it'll be crazy, especially considering last year they had such a terrible season and this season they've got finals footy. It's what an amazing turnaround. I rate the Cowboys a 7 and I really, really like their side, but I just think that their absolute kryptonite of a team that they would face would be the Panthers because the Panthers, very good defensively, very good forward pack, and Cleary's kicking game, he's going to be turning their big forward pack around all night. And I just think that that's the worst case scenario for the Cowboys is a side like the Panthers. Because I can see where they could punch holes in the Storm's pack. they're not going to do that against the Panthers. And yeah, so that's why there are 7. And I think that they would beat maybe a lot of the teams that I've ranked higher than them as a threat to the Panthers, but it's just that styles make fights sort of thing. And the other thing is too, when we played them this year, we just completely snuffed them out.
Yeah.
And that's stuck with me, and I don't know why. It's just one of those things where every so often over the last couple of years we've played teams and we've completely snuffed them out. And I don't know. It just has always stuck with me, that has. Because I remember that game we were playing against them at Penrith Footy Stadium, and it was like, this is a huge game. It's going to, and it was a no contest.
Yeah.
And that kind of got me. So your main contenders are the Cowboys, the Roosters, and the Rabbitohs.
Yep. And
mine are the Rabbitohs and Storm, basically.
There we go.
So in the first week of the finals, let's go by the ladder right now. Out of the top 4 teams, who would you rather play in the first week, the Storm, the Sharks, or the Cowboys?
Oh, I'd rather play the Sharks.
Really?
Yeah.
I would rather play the Storm. I would rather just play them straight up.
Get it over and done with.
Yeah, just,
have them cross to the other side of the draw.
Well, I guess that's a bonus as well, but I think that because I say the Storm is such a threat, if we lose to them, we get another chance at it.
Yeah.
I don't know. I just look at those teams and think, yeah, let's play you bastards right now. Let's do it. Let's get it on. Let's not wait for it.
That's really interesting, especially given. So my line of thinking was that I understand. That's actually really, I hadn't thought of it that way. My thought process was that's the first week with Luai back, Cleary back. That the first week of the finals is the first week that, touch wood, barring any other injuries or suspensions, we will be able to field our best 17. And I think I would like an easier game. Not that any finals game is easy, but an easier game to warm back into it rather than a rough and tumble. But then on the flip side, I actually, getting it over and done with, perhaps having that harder, grittier match to kind of, almost like a baptism of fire, so to speak, might also be good because you win, you get the week off.
Yeah.
So, do you want a tough, gritty win and a week off, or do you want a potentially easier win and a week? I mean, the week off is still beneficial.
Yeah.
Regardless.
Yeah.
Because if you lose, so whoever loses in that top 4, you'd have to think based on form as it stands, you're playing either the Rabbitohs or the Roosters the second week. And that's a tough ask.
Yeah, it's not going to be fun. There's something about it. It's with the contending teams, and it's not many times we've been in this situation as Panthers fans, where it's like, okay, we've won the minor premiership. We've known we've had the minor premiership for so long. I think we'd have to lose every single game, and the Cowboys to win every single game. It's just, it's ours.
Yeah, well, the fact that the Cowboys lost on the weekend, is good. It takes all the pressure off.
It
does.
Yeah, there's something about it. I just am like, if the Storm are going to be a problem, I think no matter how good they are ever in the finals, if they could be in 8th place, and I'd be like, oh, the Storm, I don't want to play them. And so just let's do it now. What are we waiting for? Let's get it done. So that's my thinking on that. I guess the worst case scenario for me would be if the Panthers played the Storm and lost, and then we played the Rabbitohs in week 2. But if we play the Sharks or the Cowboys, I'd be like, yeah, we should win those comfortably.
Yeah, I would think so.
So you reckon the Rabbitohs and the Roosters will be the ones that will play in the second week of the finals from the bottom four.
On current form, yeah.
Yeah. I'd agree with that. Although currently they would be playing one another, I believe.
Yes.
But I don't think it'll stay that way.
It won't stay that way.
Nah. So I think that'll be mixed up a little bit.
Yeah, so obviously at the moment you've got Eels, Broncos and Rabbitohs all on 28 points, with Rabbitohs with the far superior for and against. So if the Storm were to drop a couple of games and the Rabbitohs obviously win their games, the Rabbitohs could sneak into fourth.
So would you want to play them?
I wouldn't mind playing them in the first week. So if Rabbitohs were fourth, I'd change my whole mindset and, yes, play them the first week and get that shit sorted so that you're either beating them and dealing with it and then they're moving to the other side of the draw, or if you happen to lose to them, it doesn't matter. You get another bite at the cherry, so on and so forth. But I'd rather, for the Rabbitohs, I'd rather play them first up.
Yeah, and it's the same with me. And for basically the same reason as I said for the Storm. And I think that they're the form team. Like the Storm obviously aren't in great form at the moment and haven't been for a couple of months, even though they just beat us. But, the Rabbitohs just look on fire and just, why not? Just let's do it. Let's get it done, And I feel as though they're the two teams for me that if we play them, we could play them again in the grand final.
Yep.
It feels like really, really, I don't know. They just feel like the two teams that will make it. Like all the other teams I can sort of look at and be like, but they're the ones that sort of have runs on the board, at least getting to the grand final in recent years. I know the Sharks were there not long ago with their Asterix, but it's a bit of a different scenario now that, they're all getting tested.
So it's interesting looking at a couple of the runs home in terms of the draw. So looking at the Eels, they've got the Dogs this week.
Yeah, and I'm tipping the Dogs.
I've said I think the Dogs are in with a real chance. Then they have the Broncos away. And then they have the Storm at home to finish the season. Now, if they drop two of those games, and I'm just going back to my other screen. So they drop two of those games. So they'll finish on 32. Yeah. But the Rabbitohs, Broncos, as I said, all on the same points. But the Broncos have a far superior, well, not far, but they have a superior for and against compared to the Eels. So if they finish on 32, the Roosters are only one game back from the Eels. If the Roosters can win the rest of their games, they will finish ahead of the Eels. So the Eels will actually limp into 8th.
Yeah, and then
the Roosters have the Tigers at home. Then obviously they have the Storm away, and then as we all know, they've got the big clash with the Rabbitohs opening the refurbished, rebuilt Allianz Stadium for the final round. So there's a lot to play out for that bottom four in particular.
Yeah, and you know what? I'm just looking at the ladder here. So hang on, I'm trying to move between screens. So the Eels are currently 4 wins ahead of the Raiders, right?
Yeah.
The Raiders' next few opponents are basically custom made for them. If they're going to get back into it,
so they'll lose every game. What are you talking about?
Or they'll win the next two and then lose the last one by 40. So the Raiders' next opponent, the Newcastle Knights, they should win that one. Right? Then their opponent after that, the Manly Sea Eagles. The Sea Eagles are not too bad of an opponent, but I could see Manly's season just tailing right off, right? And we kind of saw that in their last game. And then the last game for the Raiders is against the West Tigers.
Yeah.
Who I can see where the Tigers will put in a plucky performance and, they can try and avoid the wooden spoon or something like that. But they're three bloody good opponents to be coming up against in the last 3 weeks. Whereas, as you say, you look at that Eels run home and there's no easy games there.
No. But it's the Raiders for and against that then gets them into trouble.
Yeah. But that's where the Raiders would need to rack up a couple of big scores. Like I can see them doing it against Newcastle. And you could see them doing it against the West Tigers as well.
It is possible.
Yeah, it's possible. But it would have to be, like, if that all happens, I would not want to be the Eels. I would not want to be the Eels. Just based on what my podcast will be on the week after the fucking last round would be, because it will be fun. It'll be a lot of fun. I'll invite you back ahead of time for that one. Okay, so now we've got a little bit of news that you brought up before the podcast where there is a recommendation from the NRL, from a bunch of talking heads at front office, about limiting contact between players in training sessions in the pre-season to limit head knocks, as we have seen in gridiron over in the United States and the NFL and college football over there. It's a weird one, this one, don't you reckon?
Yeah, it is a little bit. So this is in the SMH, it was reported last night in SMH Online, so it's probably in today's print version somewhere, saying that the NRL's medical advisory panel will present recommendations to the ARLC in the off-season on potentially introducing pre-season training limits with a particular focus on full contact sessions, and goes on to say that, they've had this situation in the NFL for about a decade. They've had it in the NCAA, so the college system, for the last 12 to 18 months or so, with obviously a lot of research linked to that in terms of how many concussions have been reported, et cetera, et cetera. And, obviously Andrew Abdo has said, as with any changes to the game, it'll all be done in consultation with players and coaches, et cetera, et cetera. But I think it is a strange one. I think there is so many other things that we could be doing with regards to concussion protocols that would be better placed than looking at limiting contact drills, unless the contact drills they're running at each other head first. I think, doing the current protocols around the 7 days and what are the steps that you need to go through, et cetera, I actually think that needs to be looked at before anything else. Like if you are ruled out of a match with a concussion, so you've failed your on-field HIA, that needs to be a mandatory 1 week off. I don't care who you are. I don't care if that's the best player in the game, the best player in your squad, or number 30 in your squad. If we're going to be serious about it, that's what we need to look at, because we've heard time and time again from ex-players, from current players through some of the RLPA surveys and the like, that they know how to fudge the tests. They know how to get around the tests. So if we're going to be fair dinkum about it, make them sit out a week, at least a week. And the same to be said, if someone's on the field and, they stay on the ground trying to get a penalty because, they have, in inverted commas, been hit in the head, they've got to go off for a HIA. It'll very quickly stop that behaviour, which, is giving teams a breather. And look, it's within the realms of the rules of the game at the moment, so people are playing within the rules to a degree, but make them go off for a HIA and it'll stop that behaviour. But yeah, I do think that they could very quickly and easily look at things like that in terms of mandatory stand down periods post failed HIAs.
Yeah, I agree, and just put it, like when somebody is confirmed to have a concussion, make it a black and white rule that there's no way around, you know. I think that the thing with the HIA that gets me is that it's when you see it on the field and see it happening in an actual live situation, we see some players get HIAs and like, because I've said this before, you can get hurt, you can get hit in a tackle or be tackling someone and get hurt and stay down and just be like, oh my God, that hurt for a second. And it can look like you were concussed, but you're really just like you had your wind knocked out of you or whatever it was, you know?
Yeah.
And get up, and that's seen as like, oh, this guy must have got a head knock because he stayed down, and so he's going off for HIA. The ones that get me are when it's pretty damn clear that a guy has to leave the field. Like he got completely, like he might have got up and stumbled, like he literally was in a head clash and stayed down. And then the trainer will be out there doing a head injury assessment, and then they leave him on the field, and then somebody in the bunker has to call him off the field. And you're like, yeah, he should have been off the first time, you know? They're the ones that get me, where it's like the really, really obvious ones. And you could say like the trainer maybe missed what happened. He's running out there. He doesn't know what he's dealing with. And the player presented to him as not being concussed. And obviously, every single time a player gets hit in the head, all they're saying to a trainer is, I'm fine, I'm good, I'm good, I'm good. Like, none of them are out there saying, you know what, I'm concussed right now. You need to take me from the field. It's just not how they feel. And so, I think they're the ones that get me. With this idea that is being brought forward, the reason why non-contact drills were brought in for the NFL and then college football in the US is because they would have the offensive and defensive lines line up against one another, and they would be doing live drills. So the first thing that they hit each other with is their heads. Because they're all wearing helmets. So it's head-to-head contact, and that's their practice. You know, it's not the wide receivers who are getting the ball and running across field, and the linebackers are just fucking lighting them up in practice sessions, because that's not what they were doing. It's the offensive and defensive lines, their heads hitting again and again and again, which is a major problem with the just gridiron in general, getting rid of that contact. That's not happening in rugby league in pre-season. I don't know if the people that put this recommendation forward know what a rugby league pre-season is, but there's not a lot of blasting one another in training at all.
No.
There's a lot of fitness stuff. There's a lot of touch football stuff. Eventually, as you get towards the preseason, you start getting a little bit more contact in there, but everyone's not blasting one another. It'd just be dumb, you know? So I think that it's one of those things where they're probably looking at the rest of the sporting scene and seeing this thing happening over there and saying, well, that seems like a good idea. But I think in practice, it just doesn't make sense for a rugby league, because no one's getting blasted in pre-season. Like, if you get concussed in pre-season, you've slipped over and caught somebody's knee or something, you know?
Yeah, 100%.
So I don't know. I just think it's a bit of someone's trying to justify their job at the NRL headquarters for me for that one. Now, we had a little bit of news that come out today, and it was regarding Ponga, who was, and I haven't seen the video, I've got to say, but apparently there's a video of Ponga and who's the other one? Who's the other player? Kurt Mann. Yep. They were seen in a video coming out of a stall in a pub, a toilet stall in a pub, and they were being asked to leave the premises. And apparently Ponga was unwell in the toilet, and his friend went in there to make sure he was all right.
Yes.
That's
nothing to see here.
Yeah. Look, you know, what else are you going to do? If a friend is in the toilets and he's sick, you go in there, you close the door behind you. Say, man, is there anything I can do to help you? Like, nah, man, I'm just chucking my guts up. Like, it's all right. I'll just stay in here with you. I'll keep this stall closed, you know. You want to keep your privacy while you're bathing or whatever you're doing in there.
Yeah.
So
what I will say is, it's a 4-second clip.
Okay.
So the ability to even string any kind of sensationalist context around what is occurring,
yes,
is very minimal.
Okay.
So, it was obviously put on Snapchat based on what I can see here. And, you hear the security or hotel pub staff, whatever, saying, oh, what a surprise, or something to that effect when he opens the door to the toilet stall and Kurt Mann walks out and then Ponga walks out. Having read a couple of different news articles around this just before we started recording, one of the things that the Knights have said is obviously they're seeking an explanation from Ponga. It's interesting though, why aren't they seeking an explanation from Mann? So this is the media, absolutely focusing on the biggest name, which is ridiculous.
Yeah.
So there should be, mainstream media again should actually maybe be better and say they are seeking explanation from the pair. Anywho, but one of the other things I read was they're also trying to validate when the video was taken. So it does make me think, and look, there's nothing to suggest that it isn't recent, given that both Mann and Ponga are not playing for the rest of the season. But it does make you wonder about how much footage has been taken of players out and about, potentially in off seasons, in off season, by weekends where they've been given liberties, away from football, that people are just saving on their phone for a fucking rainy day. Excuse my French. And it just makes me angry that as a society, that is exactly what is happening. I've seen it happen, not necessarily with football players. I've seen it happen in social circles where that kind of crap happens. Someone's got a video and it's almost like that revenge leaking situation.
Yeah.
This is probably whatever. It's probably happened recently, but it just made me think about that is where we're heading as a society, where people are like, oh, hey, I saw this guy on a night out, or I saw this girl on a night out. It could be any sports person. It could be any celebrity. It could be anybody. And then they choose to share it or release it when it suits them. So it'll be interesting to see what has come, well, what comes of this. Obviously Ponga's dad / manager / whatever, is the one who's come out and quoted that he was ill. So the quote he's provided, the Daily Telegraph, is he made an exciting house purchase Saturday and celebrated with a few mates drinking. Sick in the toilet and his mate went to help him. End quote.
See, and at the end of the day, when it comes down to all this, I don't fucking care what Kalen Ponga's doing. Like, they're not playing. It made me think that if there was, they're not in competition, so there'd be no reason for testing for them.
Still in season though, they would still be tested.
Yeah, but I think in season they would only be tested for randomly.
Yes.
That's the you could do a targeted test on them right now, but if they're out of competition, I don't know if they tested positive for something, and I'm not saying that they would, but just say in a weird scenario they did, I don't know that they would get anything happen to them, because for those two, they're not in competition. They're not playing at all, which is kind of a weird scenario for them. So, but I don't get the whole pull your camera out thing either. I think it's weird. Can you imagine pulling your camera out in a toilet in a pub ever?
It's so random. You know who does that? Girls in bathrooms filming TikToks.
Oh, yeah, what the fuck?
That's it. As the parent of a teenage girl, that's what happens.
It's so weird.
You start thinking they go off in a group and you're thinking, oh, they've been in there for a while, and you go, oh, they're filming TikToks, and then they come back and you say, we're filming it. Then you see on TikTok, oh, that's why you were in the bathroom for so long.
Jeez, it's I also think, like, if I was out somewhere and I saw a footy player was about to have a fight, I'll be honest, I'd be all excited, right?
You'd jump in. The Druid would come out. You'd just revert.
It'd be great. I'd light up.
You'd go all Jerome Luai on them.
People would be like, wow, you really started to sparkle all of a sudden. But yeah, I'd be excited. But the last thing on my mind would be ruining the moment by pulling out my phone and recording it. I just want to fucking experience it. I don't get the whole pulling out your phone and recording people thing. It's weird to me. I don't know. It's
very voyeuristic. It is. It's extremely voyeuristic. And as humans, like socially speaking, physiologically speaking, psychologically speaking, that is actually something that we need. We need that voyeurism, which is why people find reality TV so encapsulating. Because that is a peek into somebody else's existence, somebody else's life. There's escapism there, but I don't know what escapism, well, you're not getting any escapism from pulling out a phone and filming celebrities, filming sports stars, whoever, getting escorted from premises, or, having a bit of a blue, or having a bit too much to drink, or having a burger. It's ridiculous. It's actually ridiculous.
Yeah. I'm just not wired that way. Like, I look at it and my brain just goes like, huh? Like, who's even thinking that? I don't know. It's so weird to me. But I don't expect anything to come of this. I think that the Knights will be like, yeah, he was sick. That's what we're going with as well. And I really don't care. Like, good luck to him. If he wants to go and do all the spew with his mate in the toilet, just do all the spew, man. You're on $1 million a year. I'd be doing spew every weekend as well.
Exactly.
What do you think about the Panthers, just general, where we're at? Like, it kind of sucks at the moment because we're kind of coming home with a wet sail, and you know that we're going to be right by the finals, but it would have been nice to sort of just have the full team out there and romping away with we would have won by like 10 or 12 points by the look of it in the minor premiership. That would have been cool, but it looks like that we're just going to kind of have a bit of a meh finish to the regular season.
Yeah, that is disappointing because, there's a lot to be said about taking momentum into the finals. And it just would be nice from a confidence perspective. Having said that, this team has always bucked the trend for, in the last couple of seasons in terms of how we do things and, and how they perform on the field and what the energy they bring. So I'm not too concerned because what the flip side is that, obviously you've got Fisher Harris missing the game on the weekend and this upcoming week's game. So he'll play the last few games of the season, couple of games of the season. But, you've got a freshish Fisher Harris. Edwards has obviously been playing banged up for quite a few weeks, hence he obviously needed last week off. So you'll have a freshish Edwards, but a fresh a fresh Luai and a fresh Cleary, that would absolutely put the fear of God into most players, and particularly Nathan, because unlike Luai, who's obviously rehabbing, Nathan's still able to do full training.
Yeah.
So, and he will be hungry as hell to come out and atone for his part in the situation the Panthers find themselves in at the moment, in terms of a couple of losses, games that they would probably have expected to win, all of that kind of stuff. So I'd be real worried. So it is disappointing because I do feel like, we felt it on Thursday night at the game. There wasn't the same atmosphere there that there has been all year for our home games. But, you flip it on its head and you think, yeah, we're going to have some real fresh bodies who are primed, ready for that finals charge.
Yeah, and I think it's all of the plays you would, in this last couple of months that we knew that we had the big lead and that we could get out of Origin and stuff. A lot of them are the plays you would, in an ideal scenario, you'd be like, man, it'd be nice if he could have a couple of weeks off. It'd be nice if he could, especially Cleary, because Cleary's played a lot of tough footy and he is a halfback and he plays really, really tough. And, like as you say, because he is suspended, he's doing all the training. They're playing with Nathan Cleary at halfback in all of their training drills and stuff. So it's not like they're going to be find it weird to get him back into the side when he does start playing again, because they've been doing it all through training. So yeah, that's kind of what I feel as though as well, is that it's all of those players getting a bit of a rest, and it's been forced upon the club rather than it have to be something you do voluntarily, because it would have been really weird voluntarily to say, look, we're not playing Nathan Cleary for 2 weeks. We're not playing Fisher Harris for 2 weeks. And it's just human nature that you kind of want to send everyone out there because they're ready to go. So yeah, I agree with you in that regard. What do you think about Luai and the way he plays in attack for us? I don't think anybody worries too much about his defence at all, but I'm worrying about his place in the side long term in as far as his attack. I feel as though it's maybe going to become a point where we start looking at him as a halves partner to Cleary and start wanting a little bit more.
I agree. I find that the off-the-cuff play that Luai has is no longer as effective as it once was. And that's not to say that he needs to be super structured by any means, but I totally agree. It's not as effective. It's very sideways. That is not changed. It's always been very sideways. So he's not a direct, he doesn't really take the line on. And I know that, was it the 2019 season, maybe even part of 2020, there was a lot of criticism about Nathan's game being too structured. And I remember hearing a lot, particularly from, I think, Andrew Johns at the time, saying that's because the systems, like all of these kids that, start at, 15s and come all the way through, it's all about systems. It's all block plays. It's all, out the back for a big play. And because Nathan and all of, those players of that similar age, they've all grown up with that as the standard, whereas it took Nathan, probably a little bit longer than people were expecting of him, which was probably unfair, to find that mix, that good mix between structured play and unstructured play. What I'm finding now when I watch the Panthers is Jerome hasn't learnt to be structured. So he's still completely unstructured, off script. And there are times when that is just amazing and flamboyant. And when it comes off, it's beautiful. But it's not happening often enough.
Yeah.
And what will happen next year naturally is the way he plays will have to change. And it will have to change because there's no kick out.
Yeah.
So, obviously we've got a lot of depth. We actually do have quite a bit of depth in our second rowers and, our edge back rowers. And obviously we've got Luke Gartner coming. You've got Lenu there, you've got Sorensen there, you've got Liam Martin, then you've got a whole range of players in New South Wales Cup who are knocking on the door and will probably get some chances next year as well. So I think Luai will have to change how he plays a little bit next year because you don't have kick out outside him.
Yeah.
So that'll be interesting. But, they've got Kurt Falls in New South Wales Cup. And, he's a bit of my concern is if they wanted to kind of bring him up, he's a bit too much like Nathan.
Mm-hmm.
So then it's a bit too same.
Yeah.
But, in terms of he'd hold and end up, he'd do the good job. But, yeah, I think Luai does need to think about how he can elevate his game. Like, what's the next thing for him now that his little, foil in terms of kick out won't be there next year?
Yeah, I agree completely. And I guess there's always the spectre for Luai of Matt Burton coming towards the end of his contract at the Bulldogs, and the Panthers are like, man, we could get this guy back. Because Burton, if you look at him right now as a player he is, be the perfect halves partner for Cleary in terms of his age, his size. He's a big ball runner, very good ball runner, and he's got a little bit more of the skill side of the game that Luai kind of doesn't quite have at the moment anyway. And I just think that I think it's one of those things where you could look at, like, if the Panthers don't win the Premiership this year, you could look at that and say, well, maybe that's one of the areas they could have improved in is at 5'8", because I don't know, I just, there's too many games with Luai where I see his play and it's just, we need more from him. Like, I hope that he pulls it together and he makes it all happen, because he's such a great competitor. But I just feel as though, and he does this thing where when he gets the ball and we're in a good attacking position, because he's not a hard straight ball runner, he uses his footwork. So the first thing he does is he stops and it sort of is like a bit of a handbrake on our attack. And then he engages the line, and that's when he's looking for his ball plays for the most part, because he's not really one of those hard ball runners himself. Where he's really good is when you take on the line and the defence isn't set. And then he uses that footwork and he normally gets through and scores. Like, he's really good in that sense. But, I think in set game situations, he just goes straight across field and then he's looking for his ball runners back on the inside and it's just kick out. It's basically always going to kick out and hoping he does something. And we need more than that. And it sounds silly because it's such a good team, but our attack is our Achilles heel at sometimes. And we can't always just rely on the fact that the opposition team is going to be absolutely busted by what we've done in defence. We need to keep trying to improve in those areas. And I look at all of the other players and look, we've obviously got a production line of outside backs. You don't have to worry about that. It's the same with the forwards. You don't have to worry about that. We've got a halfback that's young. He doesn't want to leave the club. He's well paid. He's happy. We don't have to worry about that. There's so many things we don't have to worry about. But if I had to focus on one area, it's what we get out of 5'8". And it just worries me. It really worries me, because I hope that he's our 5'8" until he retires. He's from Mount Druitt. He's one of my brothers. And I don't want it to be that case, but I can see where we're going to get to that point at some stage, and it sucks, but I hope it changes.
Yeah, I completely agree. It's just, it's so frustrating. It was frustrating on Thursday night to know that, there's still so much development left in O'Sullivan, who's going to the Dolphins, obviously, and Jamin Salmon, because the kicking game was off. They weren't landing the same way. And look, this is just, we're spoiled. I totally understand that.
There'll be West Tigers fans that'll fucking hate our guts right now.
Exactly right.
They're like, oh, you only got fucking 6-point lead on top of the Premiership. Let's look at your 5'8".
But that's another area that Luai really needs to work on. His kicking game is poor.
Yes.
Absolutely poor. He's not a genuine option if Nathan's under pressure. Because he has no long kicking game and his short kicking game is average.
It's the most rocks and diamonds kicking game I've ever seen.
And I think average would be complimentary.
Yeah.
At that time. So Yeah, so it's just, it is one of those things that I agree that our 5/8 is, that position is the weakest on the field.
Mm-hmm.
And that's coming from somebody who used to think that it was fullback that was our weakest position on the field.
I don't know.
I no longer say that.
Listen, I've always been a big supporter of our fullback. I don't know what you've been saying about him, but...
Oh, dear. If only people saw our messages 2 years ago.
Do you reckon in a couple of years' time we'll be doing a podcast where we're talking about how some young kid come up from reserves and all that, and he's the Australian 5/8 and he's like 110 kilos and he's got a kicking game, and we're like, remember when we were worrying about the 5/8 position?
Yeah, we'll have no front rowers, we'll have no back rowers, but our 5/8 will be solid.
Yeah. That's like we're literally 3 years ago we had our choice of 3 first graders. It was him, Laurie, and Burton, and we're like, which one will we choose? And now we're sitting here whinging. It's great. It's great to be a Panthers fan, isn't it?
Oh, isn't it just?
By the way, our stadium, it's cool that it's all going ahead. It's just a case of where it's going to be built, whether it's going to be the current stadium site or the site across the road at the...
Well, no. It's definitely going to be the site across the road, so the Paceway site.
That's been confirmed now.
Yeah, so the state government is now in negotiations to compulsorily acquire that site from the Paceway or from whatever the holding entity is. And so it's more a case of how long will that process take? Because once the government has compulsorily acquired or agreed to terms at least, then they can start design concepts, et cetera, for the stadium. Because I think the initial design concepts for the current footprint will change because the Paceway site is larger.
Yeah.
Having said that, the Paceway was always going to leave that showground site.
I thought
they will leave. Yeah, so they were always going to leave, and they were going to redevelop that site and put units on there.
Yeah.
Now, nobody needs more units on Mulgoa Road in that vicinity. Let me tell you, we do not need it. There is the infrastructure in that area will not support more apartments than what is already going on there in terms of with Panthers redeveloping some of their land and putting apartment living and stuff like that. It's already congested. So get rid of it. It doesn't matter. They were always going to move. It was just a matter of when. So they were marching to the beat of their own drum. Obviously, this is now pushing them, and it's pushing them a little bit faster than I think that they would have liked, because they then need to find another home for themselves, and they hadn't really started looking at that. So I would suggest that it will be probably at least 12 months before we've got an agreement in place with regards to that site being acquired by the government and relevant planning approvals and the like for whatever our stadium will look like at that stage.
Mm-hmm. And it'll be good to get that in place. Well deserved for the people of Western Sydney. I think I would congratulate all of the politicians that are involved for seeing the value in the people of Western Sydney. Very important people if those people want to keep their jobs. I guess the other bit of news that come out is one of the developments in Concord in inner Sydney, I'm willing to call that. There was a development that was put together for a club that doesn't actually play there, the West Tigers. Lots of public money spent on a facility for one football team. Kind of crazy to me. The Centre of Excellence for the West Tigers. It is one of the greatest rugby league training facilities in all the world, and one of the top 5 in Sydney. Got to be said. We've seen the West Tigers pumping it up. They've got some wonderful things there. My favourite one is that they've got a barber. I wonder if because they've got to balance the books, so I wonder if they just get like the trainee barbers in to cut hair. They do a deal with the local TAFE or something. Huh?
I was just thinking that.
They have you were telling me they've got a miniature football field that they can do walkthrough trainings on.
Yes.
Well, yeah, which is interesting because when I watch them play, it looks like they train by walking through their training sessions.
It's also interesting because to me that looks like, when army chiefs are planning how they're going to go to war and they're working on little scaled models on a that's the vision I have, but then I think, so they're going to do walkthroughs. That's great. So what's the purpose of the full-size football field outside the fucking training facility?
Yeah. I want to be at one of the walkthroughs where they're like, okay, now we're in our defensive line. Now, James Roberts, if you just start turning around in a circle like you do on the field, if our forwards could just sort of just lie down like you do on the football field for us. Luke Brooks, we got something yet? Cover him in a sheet so we can't see him during this walkthrough because he's always invisible, and just go through it like that. I'd love that.
That's exactly what's going to happen.
Yeah. But good on the West Tigers. It's they've been complaining about getting money for the Panthers Stadium, and they've got all of that money for a training facility. It'll be really good for them to move out of the demountables finally in 2022.
Yes, agreed.
Bunch of fucking shitheads. Now, it's been a good podcast. It's been lovely having you on. Have you got anything you want to promote or anything at all?
No, I hadn't even. Oh, that's a question without notice.
I know.
I know. Sorry. Next time, give me a heads up about that. Well, you can check out our Instagram, Fergo Freak Pod.
Yeah.
I'm trying to be a bit more active on that, but life gets in the way at times. So I did go to Canberra yesterday. I did post a couple of things from Canberra. It was cold, as I said at the top of the podcast. It was full of Canberrans, so meh. Ugh. What do you do?
Yeah. Really interesting people in Canberra, huh?
Yeah.
A cardboard box.
Exactly. But yeah, go check it out, and I'll be doing a few polls in the lead up to the final series. So get involved, and we'll send those through for the boys to do some stuff for podcast episodes.
Yeah, and your work on there is amazing. Like, I've got an Instagram account now, and I see you post stuff, and I'm like, how the fuck did she do that? Like, I've got no idea how you're doing all this stuff. It's fucking just a mystery to me. So yeah, go and check that out. It's always cool. I follow it, and I'm like, wow, that's really cool to see that sort of stuff. So, and you always get alerts on there when we got a new episode and stuff like that. It's so cool. So thank you for doing that for us.
Welcome.
Me and Andrew have got no idea with Instagram. It's fucking we're hopeless. So check that out. And yeah, thank you for coming on. We'll have you on as the final start as well, because we can get our Panthers content in there and talk about the greatest the greatest sporting team on earth at the moment. Like, who's better? There's no one better.
No, there really isn't. It's hard to argue facts.
Yeah. It is what it is. We just have to settle for it, and hopefully we can sort out our 5/8 and get a bigger lead in the Premiership next year. So thank you to everyone for listening. It's been wonderful having you listening to us. If you're still listening and you're not a Panthers fan, what's wrong with you? Like, you got some problems. You need to sort that out. Thank you to Palmerbet for sponsoring us. Thank you to you for listening. Remember to check out all of our social media shit. And thank you once again to Nadine.
Thanks.
Bye-bye, everyone.
Palmerbet with the big don't argue. Punters will love that. Download our app today and enjoy tackle-busting benefits with great odds, more markets and same-game multi every NRL match at Palmerbet. Gamble responsibly. For Gamblers' Help, call 1-800-858-858.